Good morning. It is 10 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started this morning with our TFND and HHS webinar. We are pleased to have our partners from TFND, or partner, excuse me, Heather, here today to talk about the upcoming legislative session, how you can get involved, different ways to participate, finding bills, tracking legislation as it goes through. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Heather. Question and answers, you can always raise your hand throughout the procedure and I'll try and help her facilitate those as needed. Otherwise, we will take some time at the end. So thank you, Heather.
Perfect. Thanks, Abby, and good morning, everyone. I really appreciate our time together, and thanks again for our partners at NDHHS for helping us host. Today we're going to go through a lot of the logistical pieces of participating in session. As you know, in October, we did the webinar on our policy initiatives and a lot of that information. So today we're kind of doing the other side of the coin, and I'm going to walk you through how to navigate the websites that we use the most. I'll show you our bill tracker systems in a couple of different ways. We'll talk about TFND's action alerts and how you can receive those, and really take some time to walk you through some of the best practices of participating in session. As Abby says, if you have questions throughout, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll answer them in real time if at all possible. Otherwise, we can wait till the end too if you want to have any broad questions or overarching questions. So that being said, I'm going to start with a little bit of background information, and then we'll dive into the nd.gov website. For those of you unfamiliar, I'm going to go ahead and share screen now. Maybe I should do that first so I can do everything live. Let's see. I want this one right here. So can everyone see screen?
Yes, your screen is up.
Thank you. Okay, so those of you who are unfamiliar with TFND's website, this is our website. It's tfnd.org, and I have clicked on the resources tab in this instance, and this is where you're going to find a lot of the help for our policies that we covered in the October webinar. So all of our resolutions of support can be found here, downloaded and printed off. There's fillable PDFs of our individual support cards that you can print off or contact TFND if you want hard copies snail mailed to you. This is where you can find our basically three-legged stool platform materials. These are documents that we'll collect now all the way into and through January. And so if you are still working on those, that is okay. We've received a nice response so far, but the more, the better. We use these documents when we are testifying in committee hearings. For the resolutions, we'll list off all of the signers of each resolution as it comes up in hearings. And for the support cards, those are the things that we put on our legislators' desks ahead of floor votes. And so this is what a resolution looks like. I know this might be old hat for a lot of you who have been doing this work alongside us for a lot of years, but in case anyone is new, this is what a resolution looks like. And this is where you would put the organization or signing entity's name. And this is where the person authorized to sign on behalf of that organization would do so. And there's one resolution for each leg of the three-legged stool. And then the same goes for the individual support cards. And this can be any person that is a citizen of North Dakota. And they would just fill out their name, sign it. If they're willing to put their address and district number and email for further contact, that is great. That kind of carries the most weight in terms of letting our legislators know that these are their actual constituents. If they don't fill this part out, we would just assign them to a random legislator that maybe doesn't have a lot of people from their district responding to this. And so they do get used no matter what, as long as there's a name and a signature on them. And then, like I said, we'll take those all the way into and through January. Another great kind of background or backboard piece to our work is utilizing our synthesis reports. This is where a lot of our data for testimony will come from, in addition to our evidence-based best practice websites like the CDC website, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Truth Initiative, all of that. And this is last biennium's synthesis report that you can utilized to a certain extent for the time being, but every session, usually mid to late January, an updated version does come out. And I do know that that is in the works as we speak. And so we will have fresh data and a fresh document to use during this upcoming session. And I cannot sing the praises of this document more. This is kind of my handbook as I'm traveling the hallways. This has great pullouts in terms of graphics and bite-sized pieces of data. And so this is always a wonderful place to get information if you're writing testimony or participating in talking with legislators ahead of committee hearings or floor votes. And so keep an eye peeled for when the next synthesis report comes out in January, hopefully January. It's typically by the end of that month. And TFND will be sharing that with our partners. And then we always post the newest version here under the resources tab of the website. So that's kind of an easy way to find some of the pieces of data and statistics that you can use if you're helping us to write testimony. Another kind of piece of background that's really nice to have on here is if you go to our search bar and type in voting record, you can look at the past sessions, a number of them, how your legislator might have voted. And so if you click on one of the years, it'll pull up, and Andrew has done a wonderful job of explaining our methodology and what this all means and how you can read it. But you can pull up and look at the history of any legislator as it relates to tobacco prevention bills that went through during that session. And so if you want to know if they voted yes in favor of us, or if you just want to simply look at their percentage, you can see whether they were supportive 2 out of 4 times or 1 out of 4 times or all of the times. And so that's kind of a nice resource to be able to have. And we have that going back for a number of years. And so you can kind of get a little bit of a history on where people stand on tobacco prevention legislation. We will track this again and have the newest one posted, as it comes out at the end of this session too, so that you can build that history. That being said, there are a lot of new legislators this year. And so there's going to be a lot of unknown entities and a lot of education and advocacy that we'll need to be working on. Another spot you can find some information and where you will be able to find the recording from today is under the useful resources and links. We have a history of all of our hosted webinars that we've been doing for the past couple of years. And so if you want information on how to connect with policymakers, how to coalition build, how to partner with others, with schools or other partners, and that type of information. And here's where our legislative priorities one is recorded. This today will be on this list at the bottom after we hang up. It'll be posted within the next few days typically. And so that's where you can find that resource. I'm kind of checking off my list here as we talk. Okay, so another fun opportunity I won't dwell too much on since we've already hosted a call on, but if you look at the tabs across the top, you can see we are doing a day at the Capitol again on February 4th. And so as we ramp up all of our interactions with the legislators and get our grassroots network involved, this is a really cool way to come together in person. And if you haven't heard about this event yet, feel free to reach out to Andrew or myself or Abby, and we can get you all the information you need in addition to the information provided here on this page of the website. But it's a great way to come together and have students and young adults get education and advocacy training around the three-legged stools of tobacco prevention policy. And then they also get training on how to interact and tell their story to the legislators from their home districts. And we facilitate that throughout the day on February 4th. And so it will be very I think engaging and fun for everyone involved. So that's where you can find more information on that. Another resource that I will mention is TFND's e-newsletter list. And we post these monthly, but during the legislative session, we actually supplement our regular monthly newsletters with legislative updates and calls to action. And so if you are subscribed, you'll automatically, if you are subscribed to the e-newsletter, you'll automatically already be subscribed to the call to actions and legislative updates. If you aren't, they're on our Facebook page. You can find last month's e-newsletter, or you can simply let Andrew or I know and we will send you a link to be able to subscribe. This is what a call to action looked like last session. It was when we were advocating against the cigar lounge bill. And we will tell you kind of the highlights of what you need to know to be able to participate. We'll give you some templates, we'll give you some direction, we'll help you find your legislators if you need to find your legislators. And they're usually pretty short and sweet, so it's not a whole lot of overwhelming information to take in. But as you can see, in every issue and every alert, there's always a subscribe button that you can click on, and you can enter your email and contact information and subscribe. If you've
Heather,
opted
it's still
out,
on the day at the Capitol slide.
what was that?
It's still on the day at the Capitol slide. Did you want to show one of your alerts?
I did. I'm sorry. Let
Okay.
me see what I did.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just want to
No,
make
I'm
sure.
glad that you did. Let me see. Let me stop sharing once. I wonder if I shared a tab instead of my whole screen. Let me go back and see if I can redo that. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, I had moved on and I was showing an action alert. So let me see. I want to share. Here's what I want to share. Okay. I did do it wrong. Okay. Now, can you see call to action alert?
Yes, there you go.
Excellent. Thanks, Abby, for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so as I was saying, this is what a call to action alert looks like. Short, sweet, to the point. It will usually give you some direction on how we're either supporting or opposing a bill that we're talking about. And it'll give you some tips and tricks on how to contact your legislators, typically via email at this point. This was ahead of a floor vote in this instance. And then we'll help you find your legislators if you need help doing that. And we'll walk through this more in a minute, how to navigate this nd.gov website. But that's kind of the gist of what we're doing here. As I was saying, if you aren't already subscribed, the subscribe button's always in the upper left-hand corner. And there's a link to this on our website too, where we can just send you the link as well. But here's where you'd enter in your contact information and subscribe. And we try not to be too overzealous with the amount of times we contact you, but we do make sure that you're in the loop with our updates and with everything that's going on. So typically these will come out weekly or as needed if we have a lot of hearing votes and floor votes going on. Okay, so that is the gist of how you find a lot of the background information. So now we're going to dive in a little bit to the nd.gov website. Did that pop up, Abby, as I switched tabs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so basically if you go nd.gov, here, I'll start way back at the beginning here at the home page. This is what it looks like when you first type that in. And you want to go to the government tab and go down to state government. And this is where you'll be able to find the link to the North Dakota Legislative Assembly. So as you see, you have to scroll down a little bit, and you'll go to the Legislative Assembly link. And this is kind of where we live during session. Across the top, you have a number of tabs, and we'll go through the ones that I use the most. You'll also have the Find My Legislator link here. If you aren't using the TFND link with the district Find My Legislator, you would just simply enter in your host number and zip code, and you'd be able to pull up your legislators like that. Oops, 5, 8. And then it will give you your district. And so you'd pull up your address, click on the one that's at, and then it will show you your legislators that you have. For our purposes, we're going to start here under Legislative Assembly. And again, there's lots of ways that you can contact your legislators. I think this is so neat because you can actually have printable labels if you wanted to contact the entire legislative body or an individual person. They have formatted it for us, which I think is a neat perk to utilizing some of the information on here. But we'll click on Legislative Assembly and we'll go into members. So now if you want information on any specific legislator, you could simply click on that legislator and it will tell you. They'll give you some biography information, which is always helpful when you're trying to make a connection or build a relationship. You'll get a little bit of insight into who they are as a person, in addition to what they are working on for the session. And so you can see what committees they're on, You can see what district they're in, what party they affiliate with, if they are sponsoring any bills for the session, and they'll give you a history. As you can see, this is a newer legislator, and so they'll give you a history of past sessions as well if you want to search by any particular legislator to find out what they've been working on or what might be important to them. And so that's the list in alphabetical order here. If you want to search it a number of different ways, you go over to the left column here and you can search it by chamber. So if you want to look at just representatives in the House, you can do that. You can look at the leadership and see who are the majority and minority leaderships and caucus leaders and all of that. You can go by district. If you know your district number is number 1, then it shows you the breakdown of your senator and 2 representatives by district, and you just would use the drop down once you find your district to see that. And you'll always want to go by regular session at this point because we are no longer in the interim as of January 7th. January 7th is opening day. And so then you'll want to go by regular instead of interim. And so here are the standing committees. So now you can search by committee for a legislator as well. And we typically end up in finance and tax fairly often. And so you might want to keep this committee at the ready, and you can see who the chair and vice chair of that committee is, as well as all the members at large. And so that is another way to search for legislators and see who's working on what and who we might be in front of for our upcoming bills and attempts at policy. And then again, on the Senate side, it's the same thing. You would just click on the committee that you want to see, and it will pull up the leadership and the participants, members, I should say. Okay, so lots of different ways to find that information through several different routes. Now, if you want to find a bill, this is where you'll, actually, I'm going to go through a different way. I'm going to go through this way. If you want to, sorry, I lost my tab here. You can type in bills by bill number. I guess it's not loaded for 2025 yet. So you would put in the year that you're looking for. In this case, it will be 2025 as soon as they open it for that. For now, we'll look at one from last year. I'll just put in 1412. This was our ENDS classification and licensing bill. And so you would type that in, and then you'll get all the information about that particular bill. So you'll have an overview of what it was. The current status in this case was we got it passed and the governor signed it, and it's already in law. And they'll tell you all the versions so you can see if it was amended or went through any changes or revamps. The actions will tell you a breakdown of what happened and when it happened. So you can see where it was introduced, where we had our first committee hearing, another committee follow-up hearing. Here's where it went to the floor or with a committee recommendation, and then it went to the floor for its floor vote. And then the same thing on the Senate side. And then you can see where it was finally moved through and accepted and signed by the governor and filed with the Secretary of State. And so every bill will have this real-time history going for it as it moves through the different committees and chambers of the legislature. If you want to watch any of the videos of the committee hearings, this is where I think North Dakota kind of shines ever since COVID. They really ramped up the ways that we can participate virtually and how things get tracked virtually. And so there's video documentation if you want to see any particular piece of testimony or speaker, or just get a feel for how the committee members interact with people that are testifying in front of them. Sometimes that's a good way to do some background research. It also can give you a feel for the room or what to expect if you're going to be the one testifying. And these are both in-person testimonies and virtual testimonies. You don't have to be in the room anymore. You can participate via Zoom, if you will. I don't think it's actually Zoom that they use for their platform, but it's the same concept if you think of it as that. It also breaks it down by hearings, and so you can see a description of what happened and whether it was a committee hearing or committee work. Committee work just means that during the hearing, they didn't take action on it. They tabled it to have further discussion, and we will monitor and track when that is going to happen, if at all possible. Sometimes it's not, because it'll happen on the fly. If they have a few spare minutes, they might take it up unexpectedly and have discussion. But all of that is monitored and tracked by TFND, and we'll report on that as best we can as it happens. And then here is where you would find all the testimony on any given bill. So you can see who testified, whether they were in favor of it or opposed to it. If you click on the number that is linked, you can actually see the testimony that was provided. And I'll talk a little bit more about how to format testimony in just a minute here, but just for reference, you can see that as it was submitted. And you'll see sometimes the same person has multiple pieces submitted. This would be if you use any supplements in addition to your testimony, they'll attach those as separate pieces in this tracking system. So you'll see sometimes where I myself have a lot of handouts, and so this one I just have the one, but sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 links all with my name, all in favor. So if you're counting just in favors, it can be a little deceiving. Make sure you're looking at the names so that you can see when it's been multiples from one person. As you can see, this bill was very much supported. There wasn't really a lot of opposition. If you go to our cigar lounge bill from last session, I think that was 1229, you'll see a lot of back and forth and a lot of information that was provided, because that was a very contentious bill. Okay, are there any questions so far as I've gone through all of the kind of logistics of things?
I haven't seen any hand raised or anything in the chat.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to now find. Okay, so now if you go to session information at the top here, this is one of the ways that you can track bills. If you see here under bill information, there's a major topic index. So this might be how you find a bill. And for instance, for us, a lot of times we will search, well, it's empty right now because they're getting ready. Sorry, there's no bills in here yet for the 2025 session. Let me go back to 2023 here and show it from that perspective. 68. Okay, so session information, major topic index. Okay, so now it's still empty. Why would it still be empty? Oh, because it reverted to this. I think they're getting it ready. All right, so that's not what you would use right now, but during session, once it's filled out, you would go to T and you'd be able to search under tobacco, and any bill that has the word tobacco in it will pop up, and you'll be able to see them all like that. This is probably the more helpful way of tracking, though, is utilizing their actual bill tracking system. And you would log in as a public user, and you would have to create a username and password. And I will show you what it looks like once you do that. So you'll log in, and remember, you'll even if you do work for a governmental agency or affiliate, you'll still want to log in as a public entity. Oh, I wonder if it's because I'm already. I just tried this out this morning. Is it not going? Oh, it's thinking, it's spinning. I have the spinning wheel of death right now. Sorry, guys. We'll give it a second. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and see if it will let me fix that. Because it's a neat system to be able to see, so I really like to show it if I can. See if I try starting again here. Close some of my other tabs. Thank you for your patience. Okay, close those out. This way. Well, we will come back to that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. It's just kind of stuck. Maybe there's a lot of people training on this morning. Okay, so we will go back to another way to track bills. I'm going to go ahead and share screen again and show you TFND's bill tracker. If you don't want to do it online through the nd.gov website, you can rely on TFND. And every Friday, we try to get out our version of a bill tracking document. And here is the final version of last session's. And typically we'll track anywhere from 7 to 12 bills. It just all depends on how many we are helping get sponsored and carrying, and how many pop up that are industry backed, or how many legislators go rogue with their own ideas for tobacco prevention policy. But we'll send a document out with all of the information each week. And you can see, for instance, this is the budget bill 1004, and it passed, of course, but you can see we'll track and show you when all of the hearings are scheduled, where they are occurring, so you can find the right room if you want to participate. We'll tell you how we are either supporting or opposing it. We'll let you know when it flips over to the other side, if public testimony is available that you can participate, or if it's a closed meeting where it's just information gathering. That's very, very rare. Typically, that's only with the government agency bills, if that would ever be the case. All other bills, if we scroll down, you can see they're all open to the public and you can participate. We'll tell you how the committee votes. We'll tell you what happens in the floor votes and how things go with that, and what the status is at the end of session. We'll also tell you who's sponsoring the bill, where the committee, what committee it is in, and just try and give as much information as possible for all of the bills that we track. And so this document will be updated in real time every week with as much information as we can provide. And if you ever have questions on any of this, we can always be reached by email and talk through it more individually if needed. Another good document to have kind of at the ready is the legislative deadlines document. This can be found on nd.gov as well, and under the session information tab, which I'll pull back up in a moment. But this will tell you kind of the timeline that our legislators will follow. And so you can see, like I said, opening day is January 7th. In North Dakota, they have 80 days in which to do their business. And typically they'll try and save 3 or 4 of those days in case they ever have to call any emergency sessions during the interim. But you can kind of see that there's certain deadlines that will affect us and what we're doing, such as the deadline to introduce new bills, to introduce resolutions, except for amendments. If they have any holidays or things that are being recognized, crossover occurs at the end of February here, and they'll be on recess for a couple of days, the very beginning of March. And that is basically the first half of session. Everything will be in one chamber, and then the second half of session, it all flips. So if your bill starts in the House at the beginning of session on February 28th, when crossover occurs, if it's still alive or if it got voted as a passed bill, then starting March 5th, it will be in the other chamber, which in that case would be the Senate side. And so every bill gets a hearing and a floor vote. All bills that pass their floor vote or are approved via floor vote then get the same thing in the other chamber with another hearing and another floor vote. North Dakota is kind of unique in how they handle that. Not all states even allow bills to have a hearing sometimes. And then you can see that session, the latest it could possibly go would be May 2nd. Typically, like I said, they'll try and save a few days, and so I would anticipate it will probably wrap up the very end of April. Okay, so we're going to go back to our nd.gov website. It does not like this at the moment, and I don't know why that should be. I practiced it this morning to make sure that it would work. Alas. Okay, so back to nd.gov. We are still looking around our session information tab. So anyway, the bill tracking system, you can track bills through there. You just have to register and get your username. And if you need help doing that, Andrew and I can help facilitate that. If you want to see any calendars or schedules, you can look at them through here. These won't be populated yet because it's new. But once session starts, you'll be able to see all the floor calendars. Typically, they schedule about a week at a time only for that because things move pretty fast. So you can't look super far ahead, but you can usually look on Friday afternoon and see the schedule for the following week. And again, this tab here is just another way to find some of the things we've already looked at. Here is the deadlines tracker that I just showed you. If you have any post-session information can be found here. You can get more legislative information, which we've already looked at. Yeah, so this is where you find a lot of the things that we've already covered. I'm going to double check my list and see that I haven't forgotten anything. And we'll try one more time at the very end to go back to the online bill tracker. For now, I am going to take us back to our bill that we were looking at. 1412. So now if you're going to testify, there's a few different ways that you would do it. One will be to come in person during the hearing as per normal, and I'll go over a few of the kind of best practices and some of the decorum that we observe when we do that. If you're going to testify online, you'll want to register to do so. And again, this is something that will be a little bit easier to participate and do when this is live, because this is last year, some of the links aren't going to be active. But in a real-time situation, there would be a hyperlink on the committee hearing, and you'd click on that, and then it would take you to the options of submitting testimony, and you would put whether you're submitting online or in person or written. And so you'll click on that, and then that would lead you through the process of registering to be called upon virtually. Or if you're doing it in person, there's nothing you need to do other than show up, and you would take your turn when the committee chair calls for testimony. If you're submitting solely online, the written version, it would be a link to be able to be a part of this list here where you're submitting written. And again, what that looks like is having a document that you would want either on your organizational letterhead, or if you're an individual, you would skip having a logo and letterhead, but you would still want to have your name and contact information up in the top in some regard. You would want to date it for the day of your presentation or the day of the hearing if you are submitting in advance online. And you'd want to outline what committee hearing and what legislative assembly is for. You would always want to address the chairman first, and then members of whatever committee you're in, and introduce yourself and give a small piece of background about who you are or what your organization is. And then immediately following that, tell them how you are either supporting or opposing the bill specifically. And so in this instance, we were encouraging a do pass on House Bill 1412. And then you'll want to give the kind of headline of the bill, if you will, so that in the first two paragraphs, they get all the information that they need in written format. Especially you want this because if they don't read any further, they already know what they should do with the bill. Following that, then you would kind of lay out your case for your support or opposition with any data, personal stories, observations that are happening in your community, best practice, other supportive entities that are alongside you, backing you. And then again, at the very end, you would want to one more time reiterate either your support or opposition to the specific bill. So if all they look at is the top and the bottom, they know exactly what to do with your bill. And then again, your contact information is at the top, but also put it again at the bottom, along with any citations that you can offer for specific data that you used. As you can see, this testimony was pretty short and sweet, so it's maybe not the best example. Sometimes my data and statistics citations are rather long, but that's kind of best practice. When you're in the room talking to legislators and doing live hearing, you would want to Make sure that you are very formal in how you communicate with the committee members. So you'll always want to address the chairman as the chairman, and typically using last names. And if you are addressing other members of the committee, you'll want to use their title. So for instance, in that committee, it was a House committee. And so I would start basically every response and every sentence with a nod to the chairman and then addressing whoever asked the question. So you would say, thank you for that question, Chairman Lauser and members of the committee, or Chairman Lauser and Representative so-and-so, and then you state your answer. And so you'll kind of get the feel for that if you watch some of the past videos or if you sit in on a couple of hearings prior to testifying yourself. If you aren't that formal or forget to do that one time, don't worry. They are very forgiving of public participation, and they'll be very kind and respectful to you for the most part about that. Me, maybe not so much. I tend to get a little bit more beat up because they see me all the time. But in most cases, they are very kind and very respectful, even if you flub decorum or don't remember to follow it exactly or perfectly. But it is something that we do recommend attempting to do just because they deserve a certain modicum of respect when you're in their rooms and in those committee hearings. There is also at the podium, if you're doing this live with us, a sign-in sheet that you'll want to be aware of as you approach the podium or before you leave the podium. You want to make sure that you put down your name and organization and phone number and whether you are in favor of or in opposition to whatever bill you're doing that day. And that's a tracking document that they use to make sure that they have all the testimony. When you bring testimony to a live in-person committee hearing, you'll want to have printed copies for each member of the committee and a couple extra for the clerks that are helping facilitate the committee hearings. And so however many members are on the committee, I would print that many plus 4 so that you have 1 for every member, 2 for the clerks, 1 for yourself, and a spare. You're also going to want to have those 3 hole punched in advance to make it easier for the committee members to put them in their binders. And if you have multiple pages, I recommend using a paper clip instead of staples, because I've seen a lot of legislators immediately rip the pages apart so that they work better in the binders if they've been stapled. So paper clips over staples, 3 hole punch, 1 for every member, plus 2 for the clerks, plus 1 for yourself, plus an extra is how I recommend you facilitate bringing testimony in person. If you're doing this virtually or written, you don't need to worry about that because you'll upload it once and then everybody has it electronically. And in a lot of cases, they'll ask you to upload your testimony in advance if you're able to, so that they can look at it on screen versus on their paper copies. But I would still, even if you do that, bring the paper copies because you never know when the internet might go down or the website doesn't work like I'm having trouble with today. And so having something tangible if you're in person is always recommended. If you are attending a committee hearing, they will close the door at the start of the hearing. If you're going to enter late or be late to a hearing, I just recommend waiting until somebody isn't talking, if at all possible. Usually you can peek through the little window on the door to see if one of the committee members are talking or not, and then sneak very quietly to the back. Otherwise, the committee hearing door is typically open between hearings, and you can go in at any time and find a seat and participate. Let's see, I've covered that, and that. Okay, I've worked through most of my list here. I guess I would take any questions if there are any questions at this time. Ahead of the first hearing, we will attempt to provide some information on how to submit testimony live, since that isn't open to do live right now. And so you can kind of be in contact with Abby on when that might pop up. It would probably just be a little half an hour session, not a scheduled webinar per se, but we always want to provide that training ahead of the first hearing so that you know how to participate. And so that will be coming in January, as well as another follow-up call or opportunity to get more logistical information on Day at the Capitol will also occur in January. And so there'll be a couple more ways for you to get information from us and know how to participate a little bit more easily, hopefully, for you. Any questions at this point in time?
I don't see anything. I was able to get into the bill tracker if you want me to share my
Sure.
screen. first. Oh,
That would be
Sue has her hand up.
wonderful. I appreciate
Sue,
that,
if
Abby. I
you
don't
just want
have
to
anything for
wait a
me.
minute, let me just click. Hang on just a second. Sue, you can go ahead and ask your question while I get my screen up for you guys.
So Heather, thank you for the great presentation. My one question is for TFND's newsletter alerts. Can we sign up with our personal email for that?
Yes, thank you, Sue. Most definitely. In fact, a lot of people, if you have an nd.gov email address, don't like to use that for TFND's emails because you want to be aware of the line between lobbying and advocacy. And for those unaware, anyone and everyone can educate and advocate for policy, for best practice policy in particular. But the second you attach a bill number or request a vote one way or another, then that can be considered lobbying, which most of you are probably precluded from being able to do. And so you'll want to be cognizant of using your personal information and your personal time off the clock when you're doing some of the work alongside TFND. So if you're going to contact a legislator asking for a yes or a no vote on something, you will likely want to do that after hours from your personal email address on your own time. If you are simply providing information on one of the three-legged stool policies in general, if that fits your job description and you are able to do that on behalf of your organization or from your organization, that is totally fine. But for those of you that have rules around how you participate legislatively, just be aware that you might want to have everything going to a personal email address, and you might want to be careful about when you are working on that so that it's your personal time and not your organization's time. Thanks for that reminder, Sue. That's a great thing for us to be aware of. All right, so Abby was able to get this up. So once you log in, you'll see this bill tracker page, and you can put in, again, a keyword such as tobacco, and then all of the things will pop up that are being followed. Once you have that, she's got the search function open here. Once you have that major topic index, thank you, Abby, for driving for us today. Then you'll see all the things that we tracked last session. You can see there were 5 that pulled up just by the keyword tobacco. If you click on one of the bill's numbers, then you'll get all the information on that bill. And you'll see the video, the testimony, the committee hearings. There are basically all the same links and things that we saw when we searched the other way. This is just a faster way to find bills that are specifically related to what you are working on. If you go back up to the top, you can actually, if you go return and go back out, Abby, to the original list. One more back. If you click over under action, there is a view link that will give it to you in another format as well. So you can see there's 5 listed, but
Okay.
say it's 14 listed and you can't see them all on the screen. You can follow that list so that if there are new developments, you'll get an alert emailed to you. You can also view the list from that little hyperlink as well. If you click return, Abby, and you'll keep working down that line. And then you can edit and delete as well. So say a bill got amended to the point where it's no longer tobacco related, you can take it off your list to follow. Or if you want to edit and add more to your list, you can do that. And so this is just a nice little way to be able to track online and see the live updates as they occur to whatever bill, and to be able to get notices on those bills as they pop up. Thanks for pulling that up for us, Abby.
You're welcome.
And that might be an instance too, where when you register as a public person, you might want to use your personal contact information versus your work contact information too.
But Chelsea did make mention there was the app.
Yeah. Thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, so there is a ND Legislative Daily app that you can download onto your phone. And I don't know if I can show with my camera very well here. Let me see. I'll see if I can pull that up. Oops. Okay, so I don't know. Oops, allow. Can you all see? So ND, Legislative Daily, I bet it's not going to let it pop up because of my background I have on. So ND Legislative Daily, it's in there, and then that will give you the schedule and the calendar and anything that gets worked on as well. And I'll add that to my January notes when we have everything populated. Right now it's all empty because there aren't anything scheduled, but I'll add that to my January notes so that we cover that prior to the first hearing too. Thanks for the heads up and reminder on that, Chelsea. Other questions or tips? If people have tips that I haven't covered, we're happy to take those too. I learn new things all the time as well as this technology changes and they provide more ways for us to participate. All right, so be on the lookout in January for a short half hour to talk about uploading testimony and utilizing the phone app. And then in probably another short half hour, either in addition to that meeting or at the same time, to talk about logistics for Day at the Capitol for those who have registered to attend that. And if you haven't registered to attend, registration is open. You can start signing up students and volunteers and school, chaperones and everybody right now. All right, everyone, have an awesome weekend. Go forth and conquer. And I can't wait to see you all in the new year if I don't see you again before. Happy holidays.
Thank you.